Hi, my name is Eva Steiner, and this is my project Psychotherapists Around the Globe. I am interviewing the psychotherapists around the world and asking them the same 8 questions. I am wondering how mental health profession is in their country. Today we are going to. Thank you for taking this time for doing this interview with me. Before we start, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hello, thank you for inviting me. My name is Roxella Aragundi, and I live in Panama City, Panama. And I'm a psychotherapist, and I enjoy working with teens and adults, and I'm happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about your culture. What is some holiday or tradition that your country celebrates? And if your culture would be an emotion, what emotion would it be?
Our culture, I would say, is warm and upbeat for the most part, and Carnival, which is a holiday celebrated in February, and it's a holiday celebrated before the first date of Lent. It has parades with floats, music, and dance, and there are different carnival queens and from different parts of the country. They wear like costumes with bright colors. And so, if I could say what my country represents, I think it would be that, like a lot of bright colors and warm. An emotion would be like fun and upbeat.
Can you elaborate a little bit on emotion? Why fun? Why outbeat?
I guess because we like to see ourselves very happy. Usually we don't tell people our emotions. Sometimes we're always like, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm great, and it's not something that is easily seen when people tell you about their problems, which could be a downside also.
How did you become a psychotherapist in your country and what is your therapeutic approach?
I went to the university for my bachelor degree in psychology. And after that, I pursued studies at the International Psychotherapy Institute. They have a branch in Panama, which some colleagues started more than 20 years ago. So after graduating from bachelor degree, I did 4 years until a master degree program opened in the institute with an alliance with our local university, Universidad Latina. So I did my master's degree in psychodynamic psychotherapy with emphasis in object relations theory, that's my background.
Panama, you can go first to Bachelor of Psychology and then you can choose the master and you choose like psychodynamic master.
Yes, we in Panama we have several master's degrees. For example, they have systemic family therapy. They also have a children and teen clinic psychology. But I wanted to go even further and do a specialization in psychotherapy. There are not many psychotherapists in Panama. So I wanted to pursue that because when I was in college, I went to many seminars in the IPI, and I don't know, it really struck with me how primary relationships help us somewhat shape what sort of relationships we seek.
And can you, for example, have a bachelor in some other degree, I don't know, social work or computer science, and then choose like a psychotherapy master and work as a therapist?
No, you can have you can be a psychiatrist, and you could maybe also get a specialization in psychodynamic psychotherapy. But no, you have to be a licensed psychologist.
And you mentioned that there is not a lot of psychotherapists in Panama. Can you tell me more about that?
I think it's because, like older generations of psychologists, they come from a different background, for example, CBT. So this sort of like psychotherapy is sort of new. I would say like 20 years. There were a lot of my older colleagues that went to study abroad, and that's why they got their degrees in different countries. But in Panama, since the IPI, they made an alliance with a local university. That's why I was able to not only just stay here in Panama to study, but also I didn't have to travel abroad and do the accreditation.
And how society looks upon psychotherapy or any psychological help?
Our society is slowly, it's like in growing pains. It's like a teenager, slowly turning, seeking help. A decade ago, it was still taboo to go to a mental health professional. It was like, oh my God, why should I go to a psychologist when I have my friends, when I could go to retail therapy, as they say, like I can go buy myself some clothes or some other stuff and feel good about myself. But they didn't understand sometimes there are moments in your life where it's not just about talking to a friend. It's more about like, am I missing something? Maybe I'm not conscious of something that I've been doing, and it's hindering my relationship or with myself or with others. So I think it's slowly turning, and that's a good thing because after the pandemic, a lot of people coming forward to seek mental health treatment.
And you mentioned that in Panama, people don't talk so much about unpleasant feelings. How it is in therapy then?
It's true. People tend to think, well, I have a family member or I have a friend who I trust, and I tell them. But also, I've seen the other side where people don't tell their friends or family because they don't want to burden them. It's like, no, if I open up about maybe having some suicidal thoughts, I'm not gonna, I don't want them to be worried about me.
And was there, or maybe still is there, any mental health stigma?
Yes. For example, in Panama, there has been an increase of suicides. And I work for a nonprofit organization that helps psychoeducate people, the public in general, about suicide and the stigma around it. Sometimes when people hear on the social media about someone who might be going through a rough time and they're doing an attempt, and people around, the comments that you see is, okay, but maybe they should see God, or maybe that person's not well, and but they do it in a way that is very insensitive and almost like very detached. So you could see how for someone who's also might be struggling with their own mental health, and seeing those comments could also create that stigma of like, that's why I don't share, because if I share something about me, people are gonna talk about it, and I don't want that. I think suicide also is a topic that brings a lot of scary thoughts. Someone who's not educated in this, they might, tend to say like, well, don't speak about it. Don't tell me that. I don't want to know. So instead of making, creating that space for the person to kind of vent, they almost like close that space, and it's difficult.
And is there any other profession that people turn to or prefer to turn to than seeking a psychological help?
Yeah, people turn to their own spiritual leaders and they seek for guidance, and it helps. As long as someone is out reaching out to someone who takes them seriously and also sort of like guide them. If it's a more serious issue, hopefully they are able to tell them, I think you could benefit from going to a psychologist. Also, we have a new trend, which is our coaches. Not all of them are trained psychologists, So there's also a fine line. Yeah, if you're able to work out some issues about, like, okay, maybe I want to grow as a person, or I want to grow my career. But also if I detect someone having a mental health illness or issue, I wonder sometimes if they are getting that feedback. Obviously, in coaching, you're not able to do a therapy. It should be like separated. So maybe that's also one of the things that doesn't seem like, oh, I'm going to a psychologist, I'm going to a coach sounds much friendlier, I guess. It's something I have struggled with as well. And I think I can speak also for my colleagues. Doing once a week therapy is something that's kind of unheard of here. It's almost like, wow, do I really look that bad? Like, am I really that bad to come once a week? And once I tell them, well, this is a process and it's better that we maintain a regularity so this process is able to work better, because people are used to once a month or every other month, like sort of like regular doctors. And that's why sometimes it could create also like people abandoning therapy.
And they feel like the more I come, the worse I am, or is also the money? What do you feel is behind this?
I think money, the economy situation. Therapy in Panama is almost seen as a luxury, like something that people from more scale background they can access to. Although we have some free clinics, although not free, you can pay like a small fee, and it's all based on, okay, how's your socioeconomic status, and okay, how can we help you. But also I've seen that sometimes when you also give free therapy, it tends to also create like people not going to therapy. I don't know what's going on, if it's something that is like, okay, this is too good to be true. Sometimes I've worked with in university clinics, not charging anything, doing this because I'm passionate about helping. And sometimes people don't go to sessions. They don't even show up. They don't even cancel, which is also like, also that's another thing about the culture. Sometimes people have a hard time realizing that, okay, once a session, there has to be some sort of structure, and we talk about it, like this is how we're gonna work. We start at time and we finish the session on time. I guess also like Latin culture, we tend to go to places and sometimes arrive late. That's the main switch also. Like doctors here, they usually, if you go to an appointment, like let's say, they don't usually see you at that hour. You have to stay and wait. So when you tell the person, we have an hour, that you have to arrive before that, it takes time. It also depends on the person. What would you say about, like, does it happen also where you live?
No, people are usually on time, especially with therapy. It's really strict within the boundaries. So a lot of people come with a pre-knowledge of that. But I can imagine in Latin culture, this is not how the system works, how you are raising. So it's another layer that you need to educate your clients about.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a labor of love, I call it. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you want them to maximize their investing in their mental health. But once you keep the ball rolling, so to speak, people attend and it's great and you see the benefits.
So what is your society teaching about child-parent relationship, and whether the values of society influence how you design your interventions as a therapist?
There's an old saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. So older generations believe in spanking to discipline a child, and they have this thought that, okay, because it was done to them, and I'm okay. And they never got traumatized by it, that it's okay to do it. But now, since we know the effects of violence and domestic violence, especially in Panama, we have a serious issue with that. When it comes to designing interventions, that's one of the mainly topics. How this affects a child. People either take it like, okay, I'm listening, I'm up for new ways of disciplining my child, and others might at first react very defensively, so like, well, I don't know, I've been doing this for so long and it works, but it's almost like, you fix it. I come with a problem, so you fix it. We have to work with parents a lot. It's not just about the child, it's also about the parents. Because once the child enters treatment, we might start seeing some changes. But if the system at home doesn't change, it will definitely impact treatment.
And in general, what is the position of a parents, in a sense of, our parents idolize, like you should listen to your parents, you should respect your parents no matter what, or there are maybe some boundaries in a sense of like, yeah, the child can be individualistic, and we will support what my child wants, even if it's different from my values. Like, what is the position of a parent?
I think it's divided in 50-50. I see, for example, parents of teenagers and younger kids that are more lenient and more open to, like, okay, I respect my child's thoughts, and yeah, I might not always be right, and I can also make a mistake and own it, and also have it as a teaching lesson to my child. Older generations, they have kids, they might tend to be like, no, but sometimes I spank them, or it's divided here.
What are the learned beliefs regarding client-therapist relationship? And can the relationship continue outside the therapy once the therapy process is over?
So the learned beliefs here is that you go to therapy to follow instructions. I think that it's like when you go to doctors and you're like, okay, doctor, this is what I have.
Mm-hmm.
Give me my medication. What are the instructions? So it tends to be a little bit like, okay, I'm hoping to come to see what you think about this and help me with this. And that's one of the first things that I tell them is, when we're here, we are thinking together, but I'm never going to tell you what to do. We are going to be here. I'm going to be a guide, but I will never tell you, okay, you should do this. Some people think, okay, this is new. Let's see. And once we sort of do it, it starts to like be something like, oh, yeah, now I see why you didn't want to put your input, and they appreciate that. Others at first might be like, what? Shouldn't you tell me what to do? So it's like a process to relearn in therapy that the person is in charge of their mental health as well. I tell them, well, you know about you more than I do. I'm really interested in curious of knowing who you are, but you should also be like an active agent.
And from where do you feel this approach is coming from, in a sense of like, okay, I go to therapy and therapist will tell me what to do?
I guess it's from the approach of sometimes seeing a professional person of authority. It's like, okay, you went to college to learn all of that. You have the wisdom. Other question about whether the relationship continues outside the therapy. I mean, we have boundaries. We cannot meet socially, But let's say if I see the person, I wouldn't normally approach that person or say hi unless they would say hi because of confidentiality. There's also a saying here that Panama is like a small tissue paper. Everybody knows each other in a way. People are very mindful of like, oh, so you know her. So
And what is the learned belief regarding when the therapy process is over? Can you then have a friendship or even romantic relationship with the clients after half a year, after 2 years?
no, what I learned from my studies, like it really has to be over, and it could take a while, like years maybe. But I think it depends on the person, of the therapist. Are they able to sort of like take out their therapist hat and not let the personal relationship and the professional, like I would see that sort of hard for me to do. I always maintain my doors open of like, once the process is over, you can come back whenever you feel like it.
Is there any law for psychology or psychotherapy in Panama?
There's an association which we're accredited, where our license are given. They have the ethics law and what restricts us as psychologists. They said, yeah, we have laws about, and they protect us, and it protects also the public in general in case of malpractice.
Is supervision a must for a therapist in your country?
It's not a must, but it's highly suggested. Where I studied, it's always like, okay, are you having problems connecting with this patient? So it's highly suggested, like, okay, go to therapy, go to your personal therapy, and also seek supervision. And for me, it's like a must to. If I'm having trouble recognizing or I'm struggling with a case, I'm always like, no, I need to take a step back and really see what's happening, what's going on about my personal history that it's somehow having trouble with this case. So yeah, I fully support that. I think supervision should always be something that is encouraged.
What are the most common complaints that the client comes to therapy for?
Usually it's interpersonal relationships like breakups, divorce, marriage. I'm having trouble with my marriage, communication. There's a lot of it. I also sort of like train myself in mentalization based model. So I know a little bit about that, and I really like the concept of that. Like sometimes we assume and don't ask. That's one of the key components. When we assume that the person, okay, I am assuming that you knew, instead of asking, hey, do you know about this? No, and we tend to do that, especially here in our cultures. Like, well, it creates a lot of unnecessary drama. But that's usually one of the complaints. Also, anxiety and depression. A lot of it. People who have really bad anxiety that is no longer functional, which can be debilitating, and depression as well. We see a lot of it here. I think it relates to what I said in the beginning about people sometimes not talking about their feelings, because talking about their feelings, it could be a burden. Oh, I don't want to burden someone else. Also, when we see people having physical problems, and when they go to a medical doctor, and they usually refer them to a psychologist, because like, you don't have a heart problem. There's nothing wrong with your heart, but you're feeling like you're about to die, or you're having chest pains. So this could be more psychosomatic than a physical illness.
Can you share a little bit more about domestic violence? You mentioned this is a problem in Panama.
The way that I approach it is to tell the person the impact that it's having on their mental health and not be judgy about that, like, oh, why are you beating your wife, or why are you doing this to, or why are you letting yourself be a victim. No, calm is like, this is something that, as you tell me, you are having a problem with. I think this is some of the solutions. One of them is to tell the authorities and have the police intervene. Like, what are your options in terms of security? Are you secure? Do you feel like you can go home right now? Are you safe with this person? Do you feel safe? It's all about preserving their security. And if they are not willing to do that, then I'll do them for they. That's one of the things that definitely would break confidentiality when you have to file a report.
So if you would share one tool, belief, or approach that is a must-have for you as a therapist, what would that be?
I would say to approach things with a benevolent curiosity, which is, in a way, a tool that I use in my practice. It's not come as a way to judge people about why they're doing what they're doing. It's more about, what are you gaining from that? Like, why do you think that this is happening to you? And understand sort of their background, and hopefully shed some light on there are alternatives to that, and hopefully have a change, a way of connecting with themselves in a much healthier way, and with others as well. That will be my approach.
So I want to thank you for doing this interview with me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.